Saluti a tutti, and welcome to this episode of Ciao DMV, Italian-American Life in the DMV. My name is Joseph Barone, and I will be your host. This podcast channel is dedicated to all things Italian and Italian-American in the DMV, aka DC, Maryland, and Virginia. My focus is on the Italian-American experience, from family stories to little-known history to businesses to cultural events, etc. Mostly the good, but sometimes the not-so-good. Today, I am pleased to present to you an interview with Francesco Bardazzi. Now, before I go any further, I want to let my listeners know that I met Francesco when he was inducted into the Lido Civic Club, of which I am a member. Francesco is currently the Vice President of Leasing for PD Properties. PD Properties is a real estate and advisory group that specializes in meeting their clients' real estate needs, ranging from a single retail location in New York City to global extensions. Their commercial outreach extends throughout the entire tri-state area, specifically Manhattan, Queens, and northern New Jersey. In addition, they also focus on residential properties below 96th Street. So, sit back and enjoy my interview with Francesco Bardazzi. Welcome, Francesco.
How are you, Joe?
I am excellent. And yourself and your family?
Everyone is good.
Excellent. So why don't we begin with one of the most basic of all questions, one that I start all of my podcasts from. Where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born and raised in Florence, in Italy, and I spent all my youth there. I graduated there, and finally, after the university, I came to the United States, where I started my first job. First was an internship and then job.
Let me focus a little bit about growing up in Florence, which is opposed to, for example, where my parents grew up in smaller towns in Sicily. But what was life like in Florence a little bit? And what were, let's say, 2 or 3 of the key values that you grew up with?
Well, let's start with the fact that I was very fortunate. I grew up in a very good family, upper middle class. So I had very good education. I could hang out with very good friends that still are my friends, with whom I still spend a lot of time when I go back to Italy. Now, talking about values, for sure, friendship, then very attached to the family. And then what I would say, I love my culture.
Okay. So you decided to come to the U.S. Now, why did you decide to come to the U.S.? I mean, at least from my understanding, at least many of my relatives in the South, they go to the North. They'll go to Milan, they'll go to Turin, they'll go to Florence, they'll go to Bologna to find work. But why did you come to the U.S.?
Well, let's start. I'm Italian. I was born and raised in Italy, but my background is a mix. My mom was born in Istanbul, and her mother, my grandmother, was born in Paris. So with my family, thanks to my family, I always traveled a lot and spent a lot of time in different nations, cities, and, I learned different cultures. I speak different languages, speak 4 languages. So these always helped me to be proactive and be open to go outside.
Okay.
Now, what brought me to the United States? Well, I was part of an association, the Tuscan American Association, and I helped this association and the pool of judges and senators of the Italian American community to find proofs that Meucci was the real inventor of the phone. Why? Because Meucci was from my town, Florence, and he invented there the phone. So through these contacts, one judge, Judge Massaro, really vouched for me and told me, look, you have to come to the United States. You need to have an experience in the United States. And this is what happened. He arranged for me an internship at the American Stock Exchange. And here I am in the United States.
And so what was, when you first came to the US, thinking back, what was your first impression when you got here and you did the internship?
Well,
And it's okay if it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. I'd love to get your
no,
honest impression.
it was a mix. It was a mix because, of course, I noticed as a good European, the biggest difference that you notice when you are a European and now being American. The way to think, the way how you approach life. Here in America, we really have a drive to have, now I say we because I became American. So I feel very American. We have a drive to achieve the goal and to pursue what is written in your constitution, in our constitution, happiness. Europeans are more, yes, we are driven by dreams, by goals, but, we settle. We don't raise our bar. Here, you really have the hungriness to achieve more. This is what I felt. One of the biggest difference.
Okay. So you did your internship,
Yes.
had this whole feeling of achieving more, etc. And then where did you go from there? The internship ended. Most people
I
might have said, I
stayed
want to go
there.
back, but you decided to stay.
I stayed there. I stayed there because they've offered me an opportunity to continue to work there.
Ah, okay.
I stayed there, but at a certain point, I felt that finance wasn't my life, wasn't something that, so decided to go back. But, a big but, because in the meantime, again, through this Judge Massaro, I have met a young lady that soon, years later, became my wife. So we moved back, let's say, together to Florence. We lived there 1.5 years in Florence. And then finally, in 2008, we moved definitely back in New York City. And then, of course, I started to work. I went back in what it was my field, finance. But, I lasted 3 years. It wasn't really my passion. And in 2011, I finally got where I wanted in real estate. And I became a real estate broker. Now I'm one of the 3 partners of a boutique firm in New York City of brokerage in real estate. And we are focused in commercial real estate.
So let's talk a little bit about living in New York City just for a little bit. And because then I want to really focus on the company that you're a partner with, PD Properties. What was life? I mean, when you went to the American Stock Exchange, I believe that was in New York City. Was that correct? Or was
That's
that in?
correct.
Yeah. And then you left, you went back home and then came back. Where did you live in New York City and what was life like there for you?
So my first experience was in West Harlem, what became the Columbia area.
Mm-hmm.
There was my first apartment. Then when I went back, I moved to Chelsea. In the area of Chelsea. And since then, I stayed there because I really like the location. Because still, I do back and forth with New York City, as you can understand, for my work. So I spend a few days of the week in New York City at my apartment. And at our apartment, my wife would correct me, and part of it in Virginia, in Oakton, where we bought a house in 2012. No, 2022. Sorry, correction.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about PD Properties. So what made you gravitate to PD Properties as opposed to hundreds of other real estate companies? And what makes PD Properties different than other companies? So let's focus on, how did you find it? How did you wind up getting there?
So how I found it. As a very good Italian, I always played soccer. And playing soccer, a pickup game, a very good friend of mine, another Italian, a Sicilian, told me, look, I have this, my friend from Palermo who's Korean Italian, and he's looking for an Italian doing real estate with him. So I said, at that point, I was out of finance. I said, let me speak with this guy. And I spoke with Tony. Tony is a very interesting character. His parents were Korean, but he was born in Palermo and grew up in Palermo. So when I went there, he told me, look, let's focus on this. You are going to be the one that takes care of the Italians in real estate, in the commercial real estate. I'm going to take care of the Koreans. And this is how everything started.
So tell us a little bit more about PD Properties, because that's interest. And I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about it, but tell us a little bit more about PD Properties. What makes you unique as opposed to any other broker out there, any other company?
So we are a boutique brokerage firm that is really focused with other countries. We can bring, let's say, tenants, buyers from different parts of the world. As I was pointing out, we are three partners. I have Tony, that is Korean, and he's married with a Chinese woman. So he has all this gravitation of the Asian side. Then you have me that, as I mentioned to you, I speak different languages, French, Turkish. So I have the opportunity, I had, and I have the opportunity to open up different markets and make my customers, my clients comfortable. Why? Because I speak their native language. I understand their culture, and I can translate now the culture that they are diving in, because you need to understand that the rules and the way to do business here is very straightforward. There are not we say something, we get to a number, that is going to be the number. There is not going to be many retreats. That's what I feel about this country. Instead, in Europe, yes, in Italian we say ma. So it's always up in the air. To get to the final point takes way longer. Can give you an example. When I was working with an American company trying to establish itself in the market of Milan, trust me, it has been hell even for me that I was Italian, because, I was used the way to work in New York City, but I wasn't used to the way to work in Milan, how they were approaching real estate in Milan, how they were thinking. When you have a letter of intent that is agreed upon by both parties, that's it. Then you work with the lawyers, and the lawyers are going to make it happen. But the Italians, they put most of the legal part in the LOI. So you need to retrade a lot of things that you agreed at the meeting.
Okay. One of the things I find interesting is the way you help to advertise yourself on Instagram. You come up with the Vespa, you drive up, and then you start talking about a particular property or a particular thing, etc. I really like that way of you sort of talking about yourself and about the company. And so where did you come up with this idea to drive up with the Vespa and a number of them and then start chatting?
Because it was labeled on me. It was labeled on me because on the market as a broker, everyone knows me as the Italian. The landlords in New York City knows me as the Italian. The community of the brokers knows me as the Italian. So it was natural for me. Okay, I love to drive my Vespa because it's the easiest way to go around New York City. I kept that habit that I got from my home country, and I said, let's start with that.
I think that's an excellent marketing tool. And personally, I'd like to see more of you, when I watch your Instagram, to see more of that, of you driving up on your Vespa and then start chatting about whatever property or thing that you want. One of the things that I want to ask you is, you talk a lot about the language, you talk about the culture, but is there anything else that makes you unique? That makes PD Properties unique? I mean, the three of you are unique in and of it yourself. Who would have thought you have a person of Korean background, born and raised in Palermo, married to someone who's Chinese. You yourself, married to an American, you speak a variety of languages, part of your background is Turkish.
And
Is there
French.
anything else that you feel makes you set apart from the others?
I would say my manners. I have been educated. We Italians, and I would relate more to the Italians, in from where I'm from. I mean, from Florence. We were born and raised there. We have a way to listen to people. We have a way to listen to people and to be, if you want, very cutthroat, but be real, honest in what we say. And these made most of my clientele stay with me. I mean, I would say 90% of my clientele is the clientele that I had in the past. The first time that I met, people come back to me constantly. Why? Because they know who I am and what I can deliver for them.
Okay. Excellent. I have a question. I saw something on your Instagram recently, and it's this concept of IT. I think it's Italian trattoria. Is that correct?
IT, Italian trattoria. Very interesting concept.
So tell me, I find that very interesting. Tell me a little bit about that concept. Is this something that you're working with a company? Is this part of your effort? Is your company involved as a partner in this? Tell me a little bit more about Italian trattoria. How many stores are there, etc.?
Yes. So IT, Italian trattoria, is a concept that was born in France by two brothers, Italian-French brothers, that were born in France. Their father was Calabrese, moved to France as immigrants. They moved there and the father started a construction company. Then the two brothers, the two sons, decided to open restaurants. But since they weren't from from the field of hospitality, they said, I don't want to have a chef. I want to have a concept that is real Italian, with all the ingredients coming from Italy, all the products coming from Italy. Just to give you an example, the Coca-Cola that they have there is not the traditional Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola, but it is a cola coming from Italy.
Interesting.
So all their products are really Italian, but what they perfectionate is the fact that all their products are made in place in every single store with 100% Italian ingredients, but without having recipes that can be applied in different restaurants without having a chef.
Oh.
They have, of course, a master chef that prepares all the recipes for all the restaurants, and then all these recipes are repeated in all the restaurants.
Okay.
Consider they have now over 100 restaurants worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And now in the United States, in New York, we have signed 4 right now. No, 5. 5. And in Miami, we have 2 open. And now.
So you've got this great concept. And are the brothers located overseas, or have they moved
So,
here?
well, no, one is here in the United States, lives in Miami, does
Okay.
back and forth between Miami and New York.
Okay.
Of course, now we are looking to expand on the whole East Coast, and so Washington, the DMV area, as you call it,
Hmm.
is a target. And the other brother instead is based in France, in Paris.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting concept, and I look forward to it eventually coming here. Who knows? My daughter, who's a foodie, one of those food influencers on Instagram and TikTok, who knows? Maybe she'll get a call to go over and
Yeah,
and do an interview or do one of her little reels on it. And that's fascinating. And now I have one other question for you. And this one I've asked of others. I grew up here in the US. My mother grew up in Sicily. My father grew up here in the US, but his parents are Sicilian. And one of the things I hear from people, from Italians who come and move here, is that many of the Italian Americans, people like myself, their image of Italy, their thoughts of Italy, is the Italy still of the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. And I'll be very honest with you. In many ways, growing up, I agree with that. And for a number of years, I honestly agree with that idea. Our thinking is we're thinking of the Italy of our parents and our grandparents. And so I'm going to ask you a very honest question. Do you feel that with many of the Italian Americans, that in many ways their view of Italy is the Italy of 40, 50, 60 years ago?
I would say yes. Very honestly, I
Mhm.
would say yes. Actually, it's interesting that you brought up this question because I remember through the judge, to one of these Italian American events, and there was an event organized by NIAF at the United Nations in New York City, and in front of many members of Italian American associations that were reunited there. The judge made me speak and asked me about this question and told me, "Do you see differences?" I said, "Yes, there are big differences because, and exactly what you pointed out, the idea that many of the Italian Americans that you find here of Italy stayed in those years. Instead, Italy, the Italy where I grew up, evolved, changed." An interesting question that, I would never forget that I was asked here. There was this Italian lady that moved here. She was old. I mean, she was in her 80s, right? And she moved here, I would say, in the 60s, coming from the South. And they asked me very candidly, and she said, Francesco, but when you grew up, did you have heat? And, my first reaction was, I was surprised because I never ever experienced such a thing. But I have to understand that many of these people were coming from rural areas in the South where, life was different from my urban life that I had in Florence.
Mhm. Yes, and that's very true. I mean, I went to Sicily for the first time in 1974, and we went to visit my father's family's hometown. And the only recollection I have of it, and I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Chinatown, Little Italy. I grew up between the Manhattan and the Brooklyn bridges, an area you're probably familiar with because it's a changing area. But when I went to the village, the town, there were chickens in the street. And here I am, a kid who grew up in New York City saying, what am I doing here? There are chickens in the street. I don't understand this. But yes, you're correct. And I'm glad that you brought this up. It's a very different way of thinking. And I can't think of it. I myself have to move out of that way of thinking. And it's hard sometimes for me because that's what I grew up with. In fact, when I went to Sicily in 2019 to visit some of my relatives, I was using some of the dialect, and they got very upset at me because I used the dialect. They said, we don't use those terms anymore.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
my cousin was very upset at me for using the term chooch. which
Oh,
is Sicilian, of course, for jackass or donkey, says, no, we don't use that term. We use asine. Should not be using that term.
yes,
Very
more
upsetting.
proper,
Excellent.
more proper.
More proper.
Yes, and coming back to one of your questions, and you made me think about that when you were pointing out the difference when you growing up in New York City and then going in the village over there. Another thing that we Italian are different from you Americans who grew up with this American culture is the freedom. You have much more freedom. You have much more freedom in your thoughts. You are much more open and you don't put limits. Instead, we have limits. We put in our education, put in ourselves so many limits in the sense that, you know, you are the son of a doctor. You are going to be this, everything is ruled up by the society over there. Instead, what I feel here in the United States, there is much more freedom, much more freedom. And this is what makes me happy. And this is what the one of the reasons why I want to stay. I want to continue to stay here.
Excellent. Excellent. So, Francesco, I'm going to kind of wrap this talk up, but I appreciate you being very honest at the end as we talk about Italians and Italian Americans living here in the last 40, 50 years, because as I said, this point was brought up to me actually watching an interview of a young Italian girl, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, and how she says, you all think about Mussolini and fascism, and you still think about Italy in those ways. So I really appreciate your honesty and being candid on that with me. If someone wants to get a hold of you, maybe entertain using your services to look for a property, because you also are looking for, you help organizations look for properties here in the DC area, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
How would they get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you and your company if they're interested in engaging with you and your services?
So just I want to say that we are soon opening an office over here. So
Excellent.
over here because we see that is a growing market. Besides that, it's very easy. You can reach me to my email. I'm gonna send you my work email, so it's gonna be easier. But I'm gonna spell it for you,
Yes, please
Francesco.
do.
Francesco at pdproperties plural nyc.com.
Excellent. Excellent.
And
But
then
one other thing, you do much more than just find properties. You do a variety of other things, don't you, in your company services?
yes, so it's not just doing retail leasing but we buy and sell a lot. And we started the new ventures right after COVID in converting buildings from office to residential.
Excellent. Excellent. So, Francesco, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
No, thank you for having me. It was so much fun. It was great. And I look forward to see you soon.
And maybe the next time I'm in New York, I'll let you know, and maybe we can get together for lunch or something.
Absolutely. When you come to New York, you are going to be my host.
Hey, we'll go to IT. We'll go to IT then.
I'm going to say in Italian, you are going to be my ospite.
Fantastic. Once again, Francesco, thank you. Ciao, and we'll
Ciao.
talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Ciao.
Bye-bye. It is my hope that you have enjoyed this episode with Francesco Bardazzi of PD Properties. Remember, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and or share with a friend. This is Joseph Barone, your host, signing out. Ciao for now.